The office of the Free State Premier finds itself in hot water. President Cyril Ramaphosa has given the Special Investigating Unit the go-ahead to investigate allegations of maladministration. This over a controversial provincial bursary scheme worth nearly 150 million rand during Ace Magashule's tenure as Premier. The investigation is set to look into irregularities in the payment of bursaries. For more on the scope of this probe, let's bring in SIU spokesperson Kaizer Kganyago. Thank you very much for speaking to us this evening. So the SIU is set to investigate the 2017 to 2018 and 2019 to 2020 tenures, in which both former Premier Ace Magashule and ousted Premier Cyril Ramaphosa were at the helm of political administration in the Free State. This at the request of President Cyril Ramaphosa. But what prompted this request now, when we're looking at a period of up to 5 years ago?
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers. You need to understand that we work on a basis of a whistleblower who comes and approaches us, and whistleblowers can approach us at any given time. And in this particular instance, the whistleblowers came our way, and we then looked at the allegations that were put before us. We then did a preliminary investigation and found that there was something to investigate based on the information coming from the Auditor General and so on. And then we send this proclamation request to the President, because when we send it, we explain in the proclamation itself why we need to investigate in this particular instance. It goes through its processes, through the Department of Justice, until it reaches the President. And we are now delighted that the President has signed, and it has now been gazetted for us to do the work. It is not at the instance of the President. It is at the instance of the SIU when allegations are brought to our attention.
Understood. So it is a long time period, two separate premiers with separate administrations. I can only imagine there's a lot of information to go through. How long do you expect the investigation to take?
Obviously, we still have to scope, because the proclamation was gazetted today. And therefore, from next week, our office in the Free State will then have to go to the office of the Premier in the Free State to map up the plan and make sure that we are clear on what the timeframes are going to be. And then after that, we will start the investigation. Obviously, it is not an easy thing for us to say we will finish it at this time, because it depends on the availability of the people that we would want to talk to. And some of the people might be away from the Premier's office, and we have to find them and get that information from them.
So we've mentioned in that introduction a bursary scheme worth nearly 150 million rand. There are a number of other points that you're going to be looking into. Perhaps you can just give us an overview of the elements that caught your attention in this preliminary investigation.
Okay, what has happened here is that the allegation that were brought to our attention is that there were issues that were not going on well with the bursaries. And not only the bursaries, but including the accommodation, the stipends that were paid to people that would not have been entitled to receive that. And then we also are going to look into student accommodation, if there was any maladministration and unauthorized and irregular expenditure in as far as student accommodation is concerned. And thirdly, we are going to look at the two reports that were done by the Auditor General on the 31st of July 2019 and the 27th of October 2020, wherein the Auditor General said there was a lot of serious maladministration that was happening. And therefore, we've got to look at both of those reports to make sure that we get to the bottom of what really happened here. And if there are people that are accountable, should be held accountable for what happened.
Now, the NPA would be the entity holding those people to account ultimately when you give them any findings of wrongdoing so that they can bring about criminal action. But unfortunately, it's not very encouraging for South Africans when the NPA has to date not successfully prosecuted a single state capture case. Where do you fit into this process? We know that initial evidence gathering done by the SIU assists the NPA. How do South Africans make sense of the process?
Yeah, what happens is we have got a clear mandate of investigating corruption, maladministration, and malfeasance. And we only refer to the NPA where we find evidence of corruption or of criminality, I mean. Therefore, if we find that, we'll refer that to the NPA. But on our own, we also have to get to the bottom of whether there were people who should be held accountable, who would have deliberately misused government money. And in that case, we then take a responsibility and recover that money from the said individuals through the special tribunal. Therefore, and we are confident that when we send the information to the NPA, they will look at it because they are the only ones who can prosecute people if there's criminality. And if they need more information or more investigation, they will send it to the Hawks. There's a good working relationship between the three of us, and then we make sure, especially with the NPA, we have signed a memorandum of understanding to make sure that we follow what has happened. But also, as you might know, if the referrals that we made are also taken before the SCOPA for SCOPA to help us also to look into what has happened in all of those referrals that we've made.
And certainly good news for any South African that the SIU is involved in recovering money from corruption-related incidents. I want to take a moment and move to the Eskom investigation. You did reveal earlier this week that you had obtained a copy of the Fivers report and that you were busy studying it. Have you finished reading that, and what do you make of it so far?
No, the investigators are still busy reading it. You must understand that they are not reading it like you read a novel and you just read like that. They have got to make sure that they read it with a fine-tooth comb, and they are able to look at areas that might be linked to the kind of investigations that we are doing at Eskom. Therefore, it might take them a little more time than the usual, and then after that, we will know what part of that information has to be dealt with. But also, we are looking at the maladministration side of things, where we want to understand who commissioned this, who are the people who funded this, why did they fund this, and all of those questions that we need to ask, because it is not only the content that matters, but also the administration or maladministration thereof, in terms of the acquiring of this kind of, or the commissioning of this kind of work.
Thank you so much. SIU spokesperson Kaizer Kganyago speaking to us there. The go-ahead given for the SIU to investigate allegations of maladministration in the office of the Free State Premier.